Welcome into this week's edition of the Railsplitter Athletics Report. Again, I'm your host, Adam Ailey. Here we are, the first week in the month of November. Fall sports are starting to end, hit their conference tournaments. Believe it or not, the winter sports are just here. Basketball just around the corner. The men's and women's basketball teams will actually be in action, if you can believe it or not, next weekend. That'd be November the 11th and the 12th. Women's basketball being at home, men's basketball being on the road. But we'll talk about that coming up next week. This week, men's and women's soccer, the women's soccer team finishes off their season. Men's soccer is still in the South Atlantic Conference tournament. Women's volleyball on a historic run that we'll talk about a little bit later on. Before we go any further, let's tell you some results from this past week. Women's volleyball, as we said, went 3-0. Again, a historic run. For the first time in program history, they defeated Wingate. They won that one in 5 sets inside the Mary Mars Gymnasium, 3-2. The following Saturday, they defeated Coker 3-0. And this past Tuesday, they won over in Greenville, Tennessee against Tusculum 3-0. They are now at 22-4 overall, 16-2 in the South Atlantic Conference, trying to become the first team since Presbyterian to be a team not named Wingate win the regular season conference title. So good luck to head coach Jeannie Michael and the rest of her team as they go forward. 4 games left to go inside that regular season. For women's soccer, as we said, they finished off their 2016 season this last Friday. That was a tie over in Salisbury with Catawba, 0-0. Women's soccer team finishes at 3-10-2 on the season. A lot of injuries, a lot of things going on there, so they'll get that corrected for next year. Men's soccer, they lost to Catawba that same Friday by the score of 2-1. Had to return back to Salisbury for the first round of the South Atlantic Conference quarterfinal tournament. They ended up defeating Catawba 2-1. They will now move on to the semifinals to play Brevard. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Men's golf was at the Golf Week Divisional II Fall Invitational. They took 7th place in that. And women's bowling, they started their inaugural season. They went 2-10 over the weekend at the New Jersey Invitational with wins over Kutztown and New Jersey City. We got a jam-packed show. We're going to talk a lot of soccer. But when we come back, we've actually got a special segment for you. We talked to 2 of the women's soccer players. They did a video project about a day in the life of an LMU athlete and a Division II athlete, and we'll talk to them, and we'll see that right after this here on the Railsplitter Athletics Report.
Pinnacle Performance Physical Therapy wants you to know you have a choice where to receive physical and occupational therapy. We take an individualized approach to treating people of all ages. Our therapist's goal is to assist all patients by reaching their pinnacle performance in school, work, and play. We have state-of-the-art equipment such as our Alter-G anti-gravity treadmill, used to rehabilitate injuries and pain throughout the body's lower extremities. Contact us for an appointment at 423-869-9923. Pinnacle Performance Physical Therapy, 362 Catalpa Avenue, Harrogate.
Whether institutional case good or architectural woodwork, Nolan Products Incorporated of Knoxville has been serving East Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, and Southeast Kentucky since 1958. From concept to finish, Nolan Products custom builds to the highest quality standards to meet your facility specifications while using only the finest materials available. Nolan Products has been serving and meeting the needs and requirements of general contractors and architects in East Tennessee and surrounding area for more than 55 years. Nolan Products Incorporated, 912 4th Side Street, Northeast, Knoxville.
Welcome back into this week's edition of the Railsplitter Athletics Report, joined alongside by Isabel and Caroline, 2 of the women's soccer players here for Lincoln Memorial University. And we're not necessarily going to talk a little bit about soccer, but more about a video project you all done. It's kind of a day in the life of a student athlete. First off, I don't know which one of y'all wants to take the first question here, but what was the inspiration behind doing the video?
I mean, being student athletes, we kind of wanted to show others what we go through and the experience that we go through and how hard it is for us.
I think it's also like to show that our life is not just like harder, it's just like also harder, because I'm sure like all these students also face other problems.
Being a Division II athlete, I think that the term student athlete is more prone to Division II, and Division III is more to Division I. Division I athletics, especially when you look at like football, basketball, stuff like that, it seemed more of a professional thing. Whereas Division II, student athletes like here at LMU, they pretty well run the place. I mean, there's a lot more student athletes than there are probably just of normal students. So it makes it a little bit more difficult on you all, does it not?
Yes, but I think we can be like 100% athletes and 100% students, and I think that's what makes it harder. Like being good in both.
Yeah, you have a responsibility to not only perform as an athlete, but you also have to perform in the classroom, you know, keep your GPA up, so sometimes it's hard for us.
What's the hardest thing about being a student athlete?
Probably I would say time management. Yeah. You have such a busy schedule, you have weights and you have practices, you have games and you have classes and projects that you have to do, so you have to just learn to manage everything together.
I think she's right, but I think also it's hard like to be the better you can be in both sides. So sometimes you have to go to bed late because you're studying, but at the same time you have to go to bed earlier because you have practice the next day or you have game or something like that. So it's kind of hard like to be the better you can be in both sides.
Now, in the video we're going to see in just a little bit, you talked to not only women's soccer players, you talked about to different athletes in different sports around. Did you see a difference from one sport to the other in the way they had to really work as a student athlete?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, basketball has very demanding schedule, like in the video you can see, and I would say that maybe some different sports, depending on your sports, they have a more demanding schedule. So, yeah.
I agree with her, and I just think every sport is going to demand like different things, because let's say like we use more our legs or something like that, so we have like different workouts, different times, but it's all hard.
Juggling classes, obviously the practice schedule, game schedule, eating all the time. When do you learn how to juggle it all? Because I imagine as a freshman coming in, you're not necessarily used to that at the high school level, but you come in as a freshman, you've got other players that are the upperclassmen already know that. Do you learn from them, or is it something you just have to learn as a repetitive thing?
I think it's you learn from them and also as a repetitive thing. I mean, as time goes on, you learn to adjust to like the time and when you should be doing stuff and how to manage everything together.
In my case, it was a little different because I came from Brazil. Like it was completely different situation, English and everything. So I would say like my sophomore year now, it's definitely much better than my freshman year, because you learn how things work, what time you have to be there, what you're supposed to do. So it gets better by the time.
Now, something, I don't know if you can see this on camera or not, but both of you being a part of the women's soccer team, something you've had to add into your schedule is the training room, dealing with injuries. And that's a lot your entire team essentially saw that this season. How do you throw that in on top of everything else?
I mean, you want to get better and you want to be healthy again to be back on the field, so you just have to find time to go to rehab sessions, keep working so you could get back into shape and stuff like that.
It's such a short season. It's like 3 months, maybe 4, of like a really intensive schedule and doing everything at the same time. So you just want to like get better as soon as you can, because you're going to have to wait probably 8 months, 7 months to play again. So you're just like, I'm going to do anyway. So you just go for it.
All right, we're getting ready to see your video. What was the overlaying idea going into it? What were you trying to prove with the video, showing people maybe that doesn't see the student athlete part of it? What were you trying to show them?
Just like the video's called A Day in the Life of a Student, it's not just us performing on the field. There's so much to get to that place, so we wanted to show everybody what it takes to get there.
Yeah, I remember when we were thinking about and then planning the whole schedule of the video, our idea was showing that, because people just see us like playing in the court or in the field, whatever, and they don't know like what takes to get there. So that's our idea, to show people that it's not simple like just shooting the ball or throwing the ball or whatever you have to do playing, but like what it takes to get there, how much hours we spend doing that, how many hours we sleep or we don't. And sometimes traveling and studying and doing all this stuff. So we want to show people that it's not just there. It takes much more than that.
All right, ladies. Well, I've already seen the video. It's a really good production. It was, very well done on your all's part. But now we get to turn it off to the public, and we get to let them see it. And here's that particular video, A Day of the Life of a Student Athlete.
You enjoy watching college sports, but you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. You don't see them at practices, at weights, in class, at study hall, or working extra. You don't feel their pain, their struggle, their mental and physical fatigue. So we will show you what it takes to get there. The sun is not even out. But their day has already started.
Hi, I'm Katherine Lundy. I'm 21 years old from Pinckney, Michigan. I'm on the women's soccer team and I'm the keeper.
I have weights from 7 to 8, then I usually go to breakfast at the CAF. And from there, I usually go to class, all sweaty, mostly because I don't have time to go shower.
Let's go!
The director of strength and conditioning, Stefan Linsmeyer, describes what it's like to work with student athletes.
They have so much going on with practices, their games, class schedules on top of it, eating. They have to figure out how to really separate themselves if they want to become great, how to really manage their time, and a lot of it that gets taken away is the social life. Everything I can do to help them to get the results they want, I'm going to do.
Team on three, 1, 2, 3, team!
It's not just a game. It's part of their life. Moments like this are moments they'll never forget.
My highlight moment in college, making it to the national championship last year was pretty fun in Dallas, Texas. I'll never forget that moment.
Even though it costs an exhausting and demanding routine.
Oh my God, a regular day of my life, day will be waking up at 5:30, going to go condition at 6, after 6 o'clock, go eat some breakfast, come back, do some work. And then like around 11 o'clock, we have individual workouts. After that, go eat some lunch, go to weights. Then after weights, go to film. After film, practice. And since I'm a grad student, my classes are usually in the afternoon. So after practice, I go to class. After class, come home, take a shower, eat some dinner, do some work, go to sleep, do it again.
And then I go to class again from 1 to 2, and I sprint out of that class as fast as I can and go to goalkeeper practice, which is from about 2:30 to 3:30, and by that time, everyone else is getting there for practice.
The challenges student athletes face also shape them as individuals.
I've always been taught, like, as a child, like, coming up as a keeper, you kind of have to put those goals aside and just try to stay mentally strong. I think that's always, like, I've thought about that for my whole life now.
The assistant soccer coach, Adriano Moraes, talks about managing student athletes' schedules.
First of all, we look at the student class schedule, and then we try to come up with the best time for everybody. Those that cannot fit at the regular schedule, as a team schedule, and then we come up with makeup practice.
So we practice until about 5-ish, and then after that I go to dinner and try to get as much homework done as I can.
Some professors support student athletes and believe sports are beneficial.
You know, you can't stay focused just on work constantly. You have to have some other things to do as well. So that's a positive influence. You have made a commitment to and have some responsibility towards, then finding out how to fulfill those commitments, meet your deadlines, meet your responsibilities, and deal with all of those different things coming in teaches you time management, perseverance, and it gets to some point as well as to an integrity.
That was one day, but they keep doing that over and over again. But why? Why did you choose this life? Isn't being a student hard enough?
I mean, yeah, being a student is really hard, but soccer's brought me so much since I've been here. It's brought me great friends, great teammates, great academics, and money towards my academics to pay for. And I guess I really didn't choose this life, but it kind of chose me, and I'm blessed with that.
Are you looking for efficient, compassionate, and comprehensive health care for you and your family? If you are, visit Lincoln Memorial University Medical Clinics in Harrogate and New Tazewell. All healthcare providers are faculty members of LMU's DeVos College of Osteopathic Medicine and are board certified in their specialty. Multiple specialties available are family medicine, pediatrics, internal medicine, OBGYN, geriatrics, and osteopathic manipulative medicine. Locations in Harrogate and New Tazewell. Most insurance plans are accepted. The University Medical Clinic is here to serve you. Call 423-869-7190 for an appointment.
It's the Old Town Grill.
The Old Town Grill is a special place where you bring more than family, more than friends. Bring a hearty appetite, because at the Old Town Grill, you'll never walk away hungry. A delicious change from the ordinary. The perfect place to bring the entire family. The best food and plenty of it. Join the fun and treat your appetite to something special.
It's the OTG.
the OTG is the place to be.
Welcome back into Railsplitter Athletic Support, joined alongside by men's and women's soccer coach Helio. First off, Coach, it almost feels like to me the season has flown by so far. The women's soccer team not having the year that I know that you were looking for, and I know they were looking into. You finished the year with only 3 victories, I think 10 losses, 2 ties on the year. But it was really a year where you had a lot of injuries and a lot of different things going against you.
Yeah, I mean, a combination of a few things, right? Over schedule, without a doubt. With the first half of the season, you and I talked, 5 out of 6 games, top 25 teams. We were clearly not quite in that stage, but very young team. You know, several, if not the majority of the starters, underclassmen. And then the injuries. Injuries is really the critical thing. I mean, on a good day, it was only 6, 7 players. On a bad day, it was 10 or 13. You know, not many teams can cope with that. But like you mentioned, you know, 5 overtime games and 2 ties, those can easily go the other side of the column, and all of a sudden you have a pretty decent year. So,
have you ever seen a season? I feel like every time I see one of your players around campus, it seems like they're in a boot. Have you ever seen a season that just injuries just derailed it from the start?
No, and you can add to it all sorts of sickness and kids that had to. This is a crazy fall here that has been so warm, and we had kids that had asthma attacks, and I mean, you name it. Whatever could go wrong this year went.
As we mentioned, you finished with the 2 ties. You talked about some of the close losses, but it's a young team, as you mentioned. I think you only have 3 or 4 different seniors, I think, maybe on the team this year. So it's almost a building block to next year.
Yeah, 3 seniors, of which 2 of them got hurt, and 1 of them got a red shirt chip, so she's coming back. So really 2 seniors, and even beyond that, just a couple of juniors, and everybody else is underclassmen. Yes, building block.
Talk about the senior class. One of them's going to be red shirt, so they're coming back, but the 2 that were injured that will not be able to come back. Talk about how their career here at LMU.
Yeah, and that's one thing I made sure that I spoke with them. I don't want them to feel that was a representation of their careers. By all means, no, they were successful. They were great leaders. You know, Marisa Kiernan, one of the 2 that got hurt, she played for the beginning of the season, and then Kat Lundy played throughout the year and was a great leader for us. And I thought towards the end of the year was the best keeper in the conference. And their contribution, I cannot say enough about them. And they kept that group together. Such a young group, you know, they kept them together, kept them positive, and kept them without losing their belief in themselves.
Toward the end of the year, you took on Carson Newman. I think it was the second to last game of the regular season. That was a team coming in across all their games was averaging almost double of what the second place team in the conference was. But I kind of felt like using that game and then the Catawba game in which you end up drawing a 0-0 tie as an example, your team defensively got better as the year went on. It really showed at the second half of the year.
Yeah, and most of those injuries that we spoke about would have been people that would have given me goals. Some of them were defenders, but the majority were goals. So we did what we had to do, and so we buckle our defense, and there's a difference between, you mentioned that one game against Carson Newman, that came on the heels of a Brevard game against Carson Newman. Carson Newman took 56 shots, not against us. We held them to low shots, and we had opportunities to score, so it was not simply just packing the defense. They had a plan and a purpose.
Let's move to the men's soccer side now. Again, you went to Catawba this past Friday over in Salisbury. They score in the last minute possible in regulation to win that game. They become the 4 seed. You make the return trip, which is very difficult and very unheard of a lot of times when you talk about tournament play, but you go back over there and you repay the favor and beat them 2-1 and knock them out of the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, the dynamics, it was so interesting because that first game, we were last game of the regular season, and at that point it's common that teams have an accumulation of yellow cards, and for those that don't know, you have so many yellow cards you got to sit a game. We had 4 or 5 guys, so that changed the game. But once you flip to the postseason, which was the second game, then you have a clean slate of cards. So now those guys are back in shape. So those 2 things made a difference. But at the same time, the mentality that they came on the playoff, the second game, because it is playoff, there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we were behind at first. They scored first, but from that point on, I tell you, we were owning that field. And I'm proud of the way they came from behind in a crazy conference in which pretty much every high seed lost. You know, the number 1 lost to number 8, the number 2 lost to number 7, and on. You know, so we're happy to come out.
We'll talk about the tournament in just a second. Let's go back and talk about the season as a whole. I know being the number 5 seed, talking to you in the preseason, that was not necessarily the goal. You thought you all were one of the top teams in the conference. Wingate and Tusculum ranked in the top 25. I think they were almost like a step ahead in some senses above the rest of the conference. But for the most part, you all were right there, just a few breaks away from hosting that first round.
Yeah, what most people don't know, and I'm glad you brought this up. You know, a lot of times you hear about this top 25 thing. This is something done by the National Association of Coaches. But just like in basketball, there are more than one top 25.
Yep.
This one that you're mentioning takes in consideration the regions. So you can only get 2 people in the top 25 in your region. And that's not a true representation of not only our region, but our conference. There's another top 25 called the Hero Sports. Wingate was top 25, Tusculum was top 25, Lenoir Ryan was top 25, we were top 25, we're 15. Catawba was top 25, wow. So that gives you an idea that finishing 4th or 5th in this conference is not a cakewalk.
Wingate finishes the regular season the last undefeated in NCAA Division II. They host the first round of the tournament, and they get beat by Brevard 1-0. I mean, that's what you've already alluded to. Most of the higher seeds in the quarterfinal Tuesday, they fall. I think Tusculum was the only high seed.
By the skin of their teeth.
Double overtime, they score late, and they win that one, and they advance on. That shows you how, I guess, competitive but yet crazy this conference can be, that the top teams that hosted, most of them are not going to Rock Hill.
Yeah, and that was true throughout the year, you know. I mean, most of the year there was never a favorite. I don't remember too many games in which there was a big margin of a win for anybody in the season. So, and that has been true really for the past several years. But in these 4 games that you mentioned, there's so much in stake, not only postseason, but obviously for now, for the conference tournament. People that might not know this, but our conference does not have, no conference in the nation has an automatic qualification for nationals. So every game matters. And so it's an incredible battle. I mean, it's emotionally and physically draining. And again, we came on top and we live on.
You talked about the regional rankings. You all were still in the regional rankings when they came out earlier in the week, or maybe I think it may have been last week. You looked at the conference tournament on the national stage with that poll. You kind of thought you may have to go through Wingate and Tusculum to really boost your resume. Wingate's not going to be there. Tusculum's still in the tournament, but at the same time, you're alive while one of those teams is not. So you all still have a really good shot at still making the regional tournament as you continue forward in the conference tournament.
Absolutely. No, well, last week we were number 8, so 6 will go on. And what the NCAA does, they only ranked on a mathematical, like individual basis. But the next 2 rankings have what they call the head-to-heads. So there's a lot of latitude and movement after that. So now you look at who beat who, and for instance, Lenoir Ryan was ranked ahead of us. Not only did we beat them during the season, but now they're out. Young Harris, we beat them in the season, they're out. You know, Montevallo, they beat us in the season, but they're out. So, you know, we have a chance. We just got to make a run now.
Friday you play in the semifinals. You're taking on 8th-seeded Brevard. People's going to look at those rankings and think, well, it's going to be an easy game. You know as well as I do, it's the tournament time. Nothing's going to be easy. What's the key going forward playing Brevard?
Well, ask Wingates, right? I mean, and Brevard on that stretch, they beat Carson Newman, beat Queens, and beat Wingates. So the keys, like when we play them here, the keys will be not let them score first, by all means, if at all possible, not even let them score, but finish the chances we're going to create. So they're going to give us some possession, and they're going to give us some more chances to shoot, but they defend well and they stay behind the ball. Their counterattack is very good. So transition back to defense and finishing the chances that we have.
All right, Coach, good luck this week in Rock Hill. Bring home that championship.
Thank you.
All right, Head Coach Helio. Let's take a break. We'll be right back with the close here of the Railsplitter Athletics Report.
Make K&K Metal Sales your only stop for all your residential and commercial metal building needs. For the past 23 years, K&K Metal Sales has covered the tri-state area with quality custom roofing and siding with many grades, gauges, and colors in stock. If you're looking for complete steel or wood building packages or steel or wood trusses, K&K Metal Sales can help with that, as well as heavy-duty custom carports. Great folks and great prices. Stop by K&K Metal Sales located at 6986 Cumberland Gap Parkway or call 423-869-4261.
Welcome back into the Railsplitter Athletics Report. Before we let you go, let's talk about some events that's coming up this weekend. Women's volleyball, again, 4 games left to go inside of the regular season. They're first place alone inside of the South Atlantic Conference standings. They're on the road this weekend at Catawba and at Queens. That Queens matchup, the Royals will come in to the weekend in 3rd place in the conference. That'll be a crucial matchup for Coach Michael and her crew. They got to get through Catawba first. Men's soccer, as we stated in the open, they are still in the South Atlantic Conference tournament. They'll now move to Rock Hill, South Carolina. They will take on 8th-seeded Brevard in the semifinals. Brevard getting the upset victory over top-seeded and top-ranked Wingate on Tuesday. So now the Railsplitters will take on the Tornadoes. Winner of that will move on to Sunday to take on the Tusculum. I believe it's Mars Hill winner. Women's bowling, there will be in Huntsville, Texas at the Cat Clash, I should say. Men's bowling will be at the Brunswick Southern Collegiate. That one's down in Georgia. And the cross-country teams, selected members of that, are going to go to the Division II Southeast meet. That's being held down in Montevallo, Alabama. LMU Sports Network is technically off this week with all the teams being on the road, but we'll be back in action again next week with women's volleyball having their senior weekend and men's and women's basketball. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Railsplitter Athletics Report. I'm Adam Haley, and we'll see you next week.
And now to Marion.